Hello world, and welcome to this edition of Tech on Fire with Blaze. I'm Blaze Stewart, architect at Winnelecton. Today we're going to be talking about Azure Cost Management and billing on Microsoft Azure. Hi guys, today we're going to be taking a quick look at Azure Cost Management, and this is a tool that is used in Azure right in the portal that gives you views into how you're spending money on Azure. And it also has some tools that will help you manage those costs on Azure as well, so you can set up things like budgets and alerts around various features in Azure. And this is going to come on the coattails of what we talked about for the last few weeks concerning tagging, because that plays a big part in how we manage our spend on Azure as well. So let's go right to the deck, take a look at some of the things that you can do with this, and then we'll go right into the portal and I'll show you the features and how you can set up things like budgets and alerts inside of cost management in the Azure portal. So here's a list of the few things that you can do with cost management in the Azure portal. You can do things like set up and manage budgets. So this gives you the ability to set up a threshold that you want to use to monitor spend on Azure, so that you can get an idea of where things are at, and then you can also create some actions around these budgets as well based on a given time period. Maybe it's quarterly or monthly, and you can use these kinds of features to get an idea of when things are going over a particular budget threshold that you might have set up in the Azure portal there. You can also use it to check your Azure spend. So this gives you some monitoring tools as well that you can use inside of Azure for seeing where things are costing you a lot of money or not costing you a lot of money at all. And then it will help you optimize your spend on Azure inside of the Azure portal. And then it'll give you some recommendations through Azure Advisor that you can use to lower your Azure costs as well. It also gives you some notifications on events. So you can set up alerts based off of budgeting so that certain things can be monitored when they happen. So if you want to get alerts whenever, say, 25% of your budget is spent, you can get that alert whenever that threshold is met inside of a budget. 50%, 75%, whatever it might be for whatever you're trying to do with budgeting. You can also review previous invoices inside of Azure as well. So you can go back and look at previous bills, and you can see how your cost has managed to go up or down within the context of those previous invoices that were submitted to you. And a couple other things you can do inside of cost management is you can manage your subscriptions and payment methods, which is kind of one of those things that is needed for whenever your credit card might expire if you're using a pay-as-you-go account, or you might want to set up a new subscription that you're going to be managing. And so you can use cost management to create a new subscription within the same tenant that your other subscriptions are in as well. So this is a very useful tool for all things money on Azure. So let's go right over to the Azure portal and take a look at what you can do with this, and then set up some alerts and budgets so we can get an idea of how you can use that tool to manage your spending on Azure. So I'm here in the Azure portal, and I'm going to start with going to cost management. Now to find this, you can typically go over here to the left menu right here, go to cost management and billings, typically down towards the bottom, or you can search for it right here. Just type in cost and it usually will come up right there. And this is where I can do everything related to billing management and cost management, etc. So I'm going to be mostly looking at the cost management feature right here, which I'm going to drill down into. And this is going to show me my Azure spend for my particular resources that I have here. So to see what my current resource spend looks like, I can go to here to cost analysis, and this is where I can do a lot of different kinds of slicing to get me an idea of what my current Azure spend is going to look like for various accounts or subscriptions that I might have. And this gives me a lot of the abilities to filter things on Azure here. So if I wanted to choose a different subscription, I could do that. I'm going to stick with this one right here. I can just select this one, and this is going to show me my current costs on Azure, and this is the forecast for this particular billing cycle. However, if I wanted to change the cycle, for instance, I could do it for this month, December 2020, and this will change the report to show you my current cost for this month, not rather than my current billing cycle, which starts in the middle of the month. And I want to kind of know what it looks like for the entire month of December and what the projections of that might look like for this given subscription. I can also add filters right here if I want to. I can come down here and do things according to resource groups or research GUIDs or resources of that type. But one thing that I've been talking a lot about is tagging as of late. So if I wanted to create a view here based on tagging, I could choose one of my tags right here, and I can use one of these things that I associated and created a few demos ago. And I currently have a tag called My App and or Environment. And if I say I wanted to get one for production, I would go like that, and I could sort or create a report for this particular tag right here. And currently there's no spend on that, less than 1%, 1 cent, very little anyway. But this gives me the ability to create specialized reports for my tagging and that I have on my applications here. So this would be for the prod environment. Everything that has that prod environment tag in this subscription would show up in this report right here. If I had more than 1 penny worth of billing on this, I think I have a storage account associated with that. So if I wanted to create one for another tag, I could delete this one, and then I could come back over here and do another tag related filter right here. And this one I think has some value associated with it. My App, it's another tag I created some time ago, and I tagged some resources with it, and it's showing me the current one based on this particular item here. It doesn't look like there's anything that's building the report based on that tag as well. So this is one service that you can show right here, and based on tagging that you can use for reporting inside of cost analysis. And we're going to be looking at this in just a second too, when we're going to be looking at this when we set up budgets as well. So this is one way that you can use tagging to create specialized reports inside of the Azure portal whenever you're doing that. And so a very powerful feature for looking at things inside of the Azure portal for cost analysis and getting a view into something like an environment or a particular app if you wanted to do that, or if you're setting up tags based on business units like accounting and you wanted to see how much the accounting department is spending. Tags are a very useful way for handling that in a given subscription and so on. So another feature I want to discuss briefly is Cloud9, and this is a feature that's being deprecated. I'm not going to go into detail. I just want to let you know that it is being deprecated at the end of 2020, and it's going to be rolled up into the Azure portal as part of the standard feature set here rather than being an external service. And a lot of the functionality of this has been rolled up and incorporated into the Azure portal because this was an acquisition that Microsoft had, and now they're going to be integrating it here. I want to talk about costs and alerts and budgets together because these two kind of go together inside of cost management tools here in the Azure portal. So what I need to do first, though, is to get a budget set up so that I can do cost alerts. So that's what I need to do first. So I'm going to click over here on add, and I'm going to come over here and create a budget. Now a budget is just basically a threshold of money that you want to use for monitoring purposes on Azure. And I can set up a budget scope here for this particular instance that I'm working on, and that's going to be inside of a subscription right here. Now if I wanted to add some filters to this particular budget, I can do that similar to what I did when I was doing cost analysis. I can do it based on tagging, for instance. So if I wanted to set up a budget for a given application or a given environment, say I wanted to look at my prod environment, I could set up a filter based around tagging. And I could also do it around business unit as well. So if I wanted to have a budget for accounting, I could have a accounting budget associated with whatever tags are associated with this particular tag here. And that's why tag enforcement is important, so that I can make sure that the resources that I want are going to show up with this particular tag associated with them, so that I can enforce those tags so that my reporting and budgets will be appropriate for whatever I'm doing. I'm not going to do that for this particular demo since I don't have much to report on inside those tagging. But in any case, for this particular budget scope here, I'm going to just keep it as is. So for my budget details, I'm going to call it Blaze Budget right here. And that's simply just going to be the name of my budget. And I can have a period. Let's say if I want to do this quarterly, I can do it based on invoice date, or I can do it based on calendar months. And the invoice dates for me typically come around the middle of the month, and for some people that's how they want to manage this. I'm going to do it based on calendar or quarterly based on calendar months, not on my billing cycles. And then I can set up a creation date. I'm going to do it. I'm going to run this for say 1 year, so I can reassess this in a year's time. And so that's going to basically give me 4 quarters of this particular budget that's going to run for. And it's recommending $152 for my budget because of my historical spend. Is kind of variable on this. I mean, it goes up and down because I add resources and remove them for the periods of time that I do this on. So it's no big deal to have a $152 budget. That's probably likely to change since I'm going to add and remove resources from this because it's a dev subscription. In any case, I'm going to set it up like that. And so now my budget parameters are set up. Next thing I need to do is set up the alerts that are associated with this. I'm going to click on next. And this is going to ask me to have an action group associated with this. So I'm going to select this one that I already have created. And this is basically going to have an email address associated with this particular action group. And the alert conditions, if I want to say this is a quarterly budget, so I want to get it maybe at the end of the month, I would expect this. I'm going to set up the percent of my budget to be 33%, 67%, and then say 100%. For the threshold that I'm going to be working with here. And I'm going to select Blaze group for all of my action groups here. And now the action groups can have other things that can be associated with them. This has got an email address, so it can kick it off. An email address. You can also do things like launch runbooks and other Azure automation features, such as a function or logic app. And if you say your budget was exceeded and you want to shut down an app or something like that, you could have an action that responds to this condition that would be precipitated from this. Or you can just do a notification like I'm doing here, which in this case is just that. So I'm going to re-add my email address here for my alert recipient. If I wanted to, I can add multiple ones. This I can also set up SSMS if I wanted to get a phone alert, and it will ping me as a text message rather than just principally as email. And of course, I'm going to use my English for my language here, and that's going to set up my alerts here. And so this is going to give me a threshold on my budgets here. So I've got kind of 3 set up right here for 33%, 67%, and 100% of the actual budget. And so if I exceed that and it's before the expected time, that's going to get set off a red flag for me. So if I don't get that 33% by the end of the month, say the end of January 2021, then I'm coming under budget. And so that's okay. Maybe I get it in the middle of February and I know I'm going to be coming under budget and everything's looking fine. But if I get that kind of earlier than that, okay, that's going to be a red flag. I need to figure out why am I spending more than I projected for my budget and things like that. So once I have that, it's going to validate it, and that will create a budget on Azure. And so this will create my budget, and now I can come back in here at any time and see the progress of how things are looking. But once my budget is set up, I can also get those email alerts as well. Before we wrap up, I'm going to look at a few other features related to cost management and billing. So the one thing I want to look at here is just how to view past invoices. So you can come into the Azure portal and review any of the past invoices for the last year, and you can come in here and download those and just see what those look like. My particular invoices for this particular subscription are 0 total because this is a subscription. I've got credits, and I've never exceeded those credits. I'm pretty judicious about managing the spend I have in my MSDN subscriptions here. I shut stuff down when I'm not using it or whatever, and so I never exceed that. But if I did, I would have to pay beyond the provided credit inside of this MSDN subscription. And so if I want to download those, I can. But if I had to pay, I could use the payment methods that I have associated with this. And I have here some cards that are going out of expiration, and there's the current one that I have associated with this particular one that's active. And so if I did exceed the provided credits, I would have to pay out of pocket for that. And I think that happened to me once in my time on Azure. I think it's exceeded that beyond that. Once in an MSDN subscription, I had to pay like a couple of dollars because I was doing something that was beyond the provided credit for me. But in any case, that's the reviewing the things related to invoicing and billing. Now I do want to look at this particular service here, and that's Azure Advisor. Azure Advisor is a service that we looked at already, but it will give you advice on how you can lower your Azure spend. So if you come over here and click here to see a list of recommendations, it's going to show you a portal right here that's going to say optimizing things. It's just some instructions for how you can reduce spend on Azure inside the Azure docs. But if you actually want to get the recommendations themselves, we can come up here to Azure Advisor and come over here and look at those right here inside the Azure portal, and it will show me a couple of things that I have associated with cost, for instance, that I can click over here and it'll show me some right size underutilized VMs right here, for instance. And this isn't impacting that subscription I was looking at, but this is in a different subscription in the 025 one. And it says shut down this virtual machine or underutilized. So this is a highly underutilized VM right here. Something that I really don't use that much. I use it about once a week, and I could probably shut it down and save about $92 a year, for instance, for the particular recommendation that it's going to make here for me. So again, that's associated with budgeting. Azure Advisor is just going to kind of monitor Azure, and it's going to give you cost recommendations and security recommendations, other things. But for cost purposes, it's very useful for helping you lower your overall spend on Azure, and it can help shape your budgets as well, so that if you're going over budget, you can kind of see where things are. And then if you apply some of the recommendations Azure Advisor does, it can help bring the things back in line with whatever your projected budget might be. So these are some very useful tools for managing costs on Azure. So we've talked about, just in review, we've talked about how you can do cost management, where you can have the ability to do analysis. We've talked about budgets and costing alerts, and we've talked about Azure Advisor invoicing and payment methods. So all in all, very useful tools for managing costs in Azure, and we will be looking at other things related to cost in the future, but we're not going to be looking at cost management. We're looking about how you can use other tools that will have impact on costs. So looking forward to more videos in this domain, as well as other things around governance and security and future Tech on Fire videos. If you like this content, please consider visiting us online at www.wintellect.com, and there you can find about services that Wintellect offers, including training and consulting services. Also, please consider subscribing to this channel by clicking on the subscribe button and clicking the bell icon to get notifications when new content becomes available, and also comment down below. You can also follow me on Twitter at @TheOneMule, and also follow Wintellect on Twitter at WintellectNow or at Wintellect. We are constantly posting things about Azure-related technologies and things related to software development. You can also reach us by email at consulting@wintellect.com. Until next time, thank you.